Thanks for still being here on Enterprise TV Live on YouTube. My case is still corruption in Nigeria. On Monday, the 11th of August 2025, a 60 billion naira fraud case against former managing director of the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria, AMCON, Ahmed Kuru, was struck out following the federal government's decision to withdraw the charges. The withdrawal was effected through the Director of Public Prosecutions of the Federation, MB Abubakar, who filed a notice of discontinuance dated July 24, 2025. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) had on February 11, 2025 arraigned Kuru on amended 6 counts charges bordering on conspiracy, stealing, and transfer of property derived from an illegal act. He pleaded not guilty. Kuru was charged alongside Sigma Gulf Nigeria Limited. On the day of arraignment, Sigma Gulf entered a guilty plea pursuant to a plea bargain with the EFCC and was convicted. The EFCC accused Kuru, alongside the former managing director of Heritage Bank, Ifie Sekibo, now at large, of dishonestly converting 20 billion naira of AMCON funds and transferring another 20 billion naira derived from theft to conceal its source. Although the matter was slated for trial, proceedings never commenced before the prosecution, that's the federal government, sought to terminate the case. The court ordered the discharge of the bond entered on Kuru's behalf, the release of his sureties, and the lifting of the Nigerian Immigration Service restriction on his passport. His travel documents were ordered to be returned. Justice Rahman Oshudi of the Lagos State Special Offences and Domestic Violence Court, Ikeja, said, and I quote, "It is well established in criminal jurisprudence that the prosecution possesses the prerogative to withdraw from the prosecution of any matter at any stage of the proceedings. The federal government needs to explain to us why the charges were withdrawn. We demand accountability. Did they find evidence to prove Kuru's innocence? Remember how the EFCC never won any of their cases in court when Festus Keyamo was their prosecuting lawyer. It's a waste of public funds to keep going to courts, withdrawing charges, abandoning cases, or they're eventually struck out for lack of adequate prosecution. Here's my verdict. There have been high-profile fraud cases against many former governors, a lot of them currently in the Senate, including the Senate President, which were undecided. 33 former governors have been indicted by the EFCC on corruption charges, but only 6 of them were ever convicted. They are 1. Joshua Dari of Plateau State, and 2. Jolly Nyame of Taraba State. After 8 and 11 years consecutively in trial, both were sentenced to 14 years imprisonment in 2018, but were pardoned by President Buhari within 4 years of their confinement. Jolly Nyame had appealed his case and his imprisonment reduced to 12 years. He went to the Supreme Court in 2020 and the Supreme Court upheld the ruling of the appeal court for him to spend 12 years in prison. However, he was pardoned in 2022. 3. Lucky Ibinedion, Edo State, sentenced to 6 months imprisonment with the option of 3.5 million naira fine. Never stepped into prison. 4. James Ibori, Delta State. He was accused by the then EFCC chairman Nuru Ribadu of bribery, was acquitted in Nigeria, but was eventually convicted and sentenced to 13 years imprisonment by a London court. He was released after spending a few years in prison. 5. Diprie Alamesia, Bayelsa State, escaped arraignment in London, was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment in Nigeria and released 2 hours after his conviction because he had spent 2 years in trial already. He was eventually pardoned by President Jonathan, who had been his deputy governor and then successor as governor. President Jonathan was the one who made the now famous statement that stealing is not corruption. 6. And the final one, Orji Kalu, Abia State, sentenced to 12 years in prison in 2019. In 2020, the Supreme Court nullified his conviction and he's presently in Nigeria's Senate. Several other high-profile cases of fraud, like those of former Governor of Ekiti State, Ayo Fayoshi, whose case was dismissed this year, former Kogi State Governor Yaya Bello, who even resisted arrest, and former Sokoto State Governor and former Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aminu Tambuwal, who was arrested and granted bail just this week, has left Nigerians distrustful of the EFCC. They're being accused of being used as political persecutions. With the EFCC now busy breaking down hotel room doors, looking for Yahoo boys, the answer to the question, is stealing still corruption, is left to the imagination.